Title: Life and Power in Medieval England. Medieval England was a land of kings, knights, faith, and constant change. From the fall of the Roman Empire to the rise of the Tudor dynasty, England transformed from a collection of warring territories into a centralized kingdom that shaped the future of Europe. In this documentary, we will explore how people lived, how rulers maintained power, and how major events defined the identity of a nation. Introduction. When we imagine medieval England, we often picture stone castles, armored knights, bustling markets, and powerful monarchs. But behind these images lies a far more complex world, a society built on strict hierarchy, deep religious devotion, and constant struggle for survival. To understand medieval England, we must step into a time where life was dominated by land, loyalty, and faith. The feudal system. At the heart of medieval England was the feudal system, a rigid social structure that shaped every aspect of life. The king owned all the land, but he granted parts of it to nobles in exchange for loyalty and military service. These nobles, in turn, had knights beneath them, and at the bottom were the peasants, men and women who worked the land in return for protection. For most people, life was hard. A typical peasant worked long days in the fields, paid heavy taxes, and rarely traveled more than a few miles from home. Yet, within this strict structure, feudalism created a sense of order in a world that could easily fall into chaos. The Norman Conquest. One of the most defining moments in English history occurred in 1066, when William the Conqueror invaded from Normandy. The Battle of Hastings transformed England forever. Norman rule brought new laws, new language influences, and a sweeping reorganization of society. Castles were built across the countryside, not only as military strongholds, but also as symbols of control. The famous Domesday Book was compiled to record land ownership, demonstrating the Normans' desire to bring order and efficiency. Under Norman leadership, England became a more structured and powerful kingdom. Medieval kings and the struggle for power. Medieval England saw the rise of legendary monarchs, each contributing to the nation's identity. Henry II, known for creating a legal system that became the foundation of English common law. Richard the Lionheart, remembered as a warrior king who spent much of his reign on crusade. King John, whose disputes with the nobles led to the creation of the Magna Carta in 1215, a document that established that even the king was subject to the law. These rulers often battled not only foreign enemies, but also their own barons, the church, and sometimes even their own families. Power in medieval England was never guaranteed. It had to be constantly defended. Religion and the church. Nothing shaped daily life more than religion. The Roman Catholic Church held tremendous influence over every level of society. The church owned vast amounts of land, educated the population, and acted as both a spiritual and political force. Monasteries served as centers of learning, charity, and manuscript preservation. For ordinary people, religious festivals marked the rhythm of the year, and the teachings of the church guided their moral decisions. In an age of uncertainty, faith provided comfort, structure, and hope. Everyday life in medieval England. Daily life depended greatly on social class, but certain elements were universal. People lived in small villages or walled towns. Houses were simple, often made of wood with thatched roofs. Food consisted largely of bread, vegetables, and occasionally meat. Travel was limited. Roads were poor and dangerous. Entertainment included storytelling, music, markets, and seasonal festivals. Life was short and often difficult, yet communities were strong, and traditions created a sense of belonging. Warfare and knights. Warfare was a constant presence. Knights trained from childhood to become elite warriors, bound by the code of chivalry. They served their lords in battle, protected their lands, and participated in tournaments that displayed their skills. Castles dominated the landscape, massive stone fortresses designed to intimidate enemies and withstand attack. Battles were brutal, but they played a central role in shaping borders, securing power, and protecting the kingdom. The Black Death. In the mid-14th century, disaster struck. The Black Death, a devastating plague, swept through England in 1348. It killed millions, wiping out nearly half the population. The consequences were enormous. With fewer workers available, peasants demanded better wages and more freedoms. The rigid feudal system began to weaken, and social mobility slowly increased. The world would never return to what it had been before the plague. The Wars of the Roses. In the 15th century, England was plunged into a brutal civil conflict known as the Wars of the Roses. Two powerful families, the House of Lancaster and the House of York, fought for the throne. For more than 30 years, political plots, assassinations, and battles tore the country apart. Ultimately, the conflict ended with the rise of Henry Tudor, who became Henry VI, founding the Tudor dynasty and marking the end of the medieval era. Conclusion. Medieval England was a time of transformation. From the Norman conquest to the Wars of the Roses, the kingdom evolved through war, plague, faith, and political struggle. The foundations built in the Middle Ages, laws, language, traditions, and national identity, continue to influence England today. Although life was often harsh, it was a period full of resilience, courage, and remarkable change. The story of medieval England reminds us that even in the darkest times, societies can grow, adapt, and redefine themselves.